The red and blue lights painted my backyard like a crime scene. My daughter stood frozen beside her birthday cake, tears streaming down her face as police officers walked through our gate. 16-year-olds who had been laughing and splashing in the pool just moments before now huddled together in confused silence. I watched Corinne standing at her fence with that smug smile, her arms crossed as she enjoyed every second of the chaos she had created. She thought she had won. She thought she had finally put me in my place. But what Corinne did not know was that among the frightened teenagers standing in my backyard were two very special guests. Guests whose identities would turn her moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of her entire life. That was the moment everything changed. The moment Corinne learned that sometimes the people you try to destroy have connections you never could have imagined. My name is Sarah, and after 15 years of moving from one cramped apartment to another, I finally did it. I bought my first house. It was not much to look at from the outside. A modest ranch-style home with faded blue siding and a small front yard that needed work. But it was mine. The backyard was what sold me on the place. Not because it was beautiful, but because of the potential I saw there. A small above-ground pool sat in the corner, left behind by the previous owners. It was old and needed repairs, but I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. My daughter Emma was turning 16 that summer. For her entire life, we had celebrated her birthdays in tiny living rooms or community centers. I had always promised her that someday we would have a real party at our own house. This year, I was finally going to make that promise come true. I spent weeks planning every detail. Handwritten invitations went out to her friends from school. I ordered decorations in her favorite colors, purple and gold. The menu was carefully planned around foods I knew the kids would enjoy. Pizza, sandwiches, fruit salad, and of course, a custom birthday cake shaped like a butterfly. But there was one person who seemed determined to ruin everything before it even started. Corinne lived in the house directly behind ours. She was in her mid-50s with perfectly styled gray hair and the kind of stern expression that made children cross the street to avoid her. From the day we moved in, she had appointed herself as the unofficial neighborhood watch captain. The complaints started almost immediately. My grass was too long. My car was parked wrong. The music from our house was too loud, even when we were just watching television at normal volume. Every week brought a new reason for Corinne to knock on my door with a disapproving frown. 2 weeks before the party, I decided to do the right thing. I walked over to her house with a handwritten invitation and a smile. I explained that we were planning a birthday celebration and wanted to be respectful neighbors. I asked if there was anything specific she was concerned about. Corinne looked at the invitation like it was contaminated. She handed it back to me without even reading it. "I do not appreciate loud gatherings," she said coldly. "This is a quiet neighborhood, and I intend to keep it that way. I hope you understand that I will be watching very carefully to make sure everyone follows the rules." The way she said, "watching," sent a chill down my spine. But I refused to let her intimidation tactics ruin my daughter's special day. "We will keep the music at a reasonable level," I promised. "The party will end by 9 in the evening, and we will make sure to clean up everything." She just stared at me for a long moment before closing the door without another word. As the party date approached, RSVPs started coming in. Emma's friends were excited. My family members confirmed they would be there. Even some neighbors from other streets, people who had become genuine friends over the past year, said they would stop by to wish Emma a happy birthday. The most exciting response came from my sister Lisa. She worked for the state government in the governor's office, handling scheduling and event coordination. Over the years, her job had brought her into contact with the governor's family on a personal level. "I am bringing some special guests," she told me during a phone call. "Trust me, Emma is going to love this surprise." I had no idea what she meant, but I trusted my sister completely. Whatever surprise she had planned, I knew it would make Emma's day even more special. The night before the party, I stood in my backyard looking at everything I had prepared. The pool was clean and sparkling. Decorations hung from the fence and the back porch. Tables were set up for food and gifts. Everything was perfect. I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that I had never experienced before. This was what I had worked so hard for. This was the life I had dreamed of giving my daughter. But as I turned to go inside, I caught a glimpse of Corinne standing at her back window, watching me with those cold, calculating eyes. I had no idea that she was already planning to destroy everything. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. The sun was shining, but it was not too hot. A gentle breeze kept the air comfortable. Even nature seemed to be cooperating with my plans. I woke up early and immediately started setting up. I hung streamers from the fence posts and arranged balloons around the pool area. The tables were covered with purple tablecloths, and the butterfly cake took center stage on the main table. Everything looked exactly like the Pinterest boards I had been studying for weeks. Emma was still sleeping when the first guests arrived at noon. My parents drove down from 2 hours away, and my brother came with his wife and their twin boys. Seeing my family gathered in my own backyard for the first time filled me with a joy I cannot even describe. "Sarah, this place looks amazing," my mother said as she hugged me tight. "You should be so proud of what you have accomplished here." The words meant everything to me. My parents had watched me struggle through years of financial hardship and relationship problems. They had seen me work 2 jobs while going to school at night. They knew how much this house and this party meant to me. By 1 o'clock, the backyard was filled with teenagers. Emma's friends arrived in groups, chattering excitedly about summer plans and upcoming school events. They immediately gravitated toward the pool, and soon the air was filled with laughter and splashing. The music was playing at a volume that allowed for conversation. The neighbors I had invited from other streets stopped by with birthday wishes and small gifts. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had dreamed it would. Then my sister Lisa arrived, and with her came the surprise guests that would change everything. "Emma," Lisa called out as she walked through the back gate, "I want you to meet some friends of mine." Behind her walked 2 teenagers who looked to be about Emma's age. The boy had dark hair and a friendly smile. The girl had long brown hair and the kind of confident posture that suggested she was comfortable in any situation. They were both dressed casually in swimwear and summer clothes, fitting right in with the other kids. But it was the 2 men in dark suits who followed behind them that caught my attention. They were clearly security personnel, though they tried to blend into the background as much as possible. Lisa pulled me aside and quietly explained the situation. "The boy is Michael and the girl is Sarah, just like you," she whispered. "They are the governor's children. I have gotten to know the family through work, and when I mentioned Emma's birthday party, they asked if the kids could come. They want their children to have normal social experiences when possible." I felt my heart skip a beat. The governor's children were at my daughter's birthday party, in my backyard, swimming in my pool. But what amazed me most was how naturally they fit in with everyone else. Michael immediately joined a game of pool volleyball that the boys had started. Sarah struck up a conversation with Emma about music and school. Within minutes, It was impossible to tell that these were the children of one of the most powerful people in the state. The security detail was equally professional. They positioned themselves where they could observe everything while staying out of the way. They were polite when other parents approached them, but they kept their responses brief and focused on their job. For 2 hours, everything was absolutely perfect. The kids played games in the pool. The adults sat around tables, sharing stories and enjoying the food. Emma was glowing with happiness as she opened gifts and posed for pictures with her friends. The governor's children seemed to be having just as much fun as everyone else. They joined in every activity, from the pool games to helping Emma blow out the candles on her butterfly cake. Their presence added an excitement to the party that I never could have planned, but it felt natural and genuine. That was when I noticed Corinne. She was standing at her back fence, partially hidden behind a large bush, but I could see her clearly. She was holding something in her hand that looked like binoculars, though I could not be sure from that distance. Her expression was one of intense focus and obvious disapproval. I felt a flutter of worry in my stomach, but I pushed it away. What could she possibly complain about? The music was at a reasonable volume. The kids were well behaved. We had permission from the HOA for the gathering, and everything was taking place in my own backyard. I decided to ignore her and focus on enjoying the moment. This was Emma's day, and nothing was going to ruin it. But I should have known that Corinne was not just watching. She was planning something that would turn our perfect day into a nightmare. It happened at exactly 3:30 in the afternoon. Emma had just finished opening her last gift when I heard the sound that made my blood run cold. Sirens. At first, I thought they were just passing by on the main road. Emergency vehicles were common in our area, but the sound was getting closer, and my stomach began to twist with a terrible feeling. Then I saw them. 2 police cars turning into our subdivision, their red and blue lights flashing against the bright afternoon sun. "Mom," Emma said, looking confused as she watched the cars approaching. "Why are there police cars coming this way?" I watched in horror as both vehicles pulled into my driveway. The sirens stopped, but the lights kept flashing, casting an eerie glow over our perfect party. Conversations around the pool fell silent as everyone turned to stare at the unexpected visitors. 4 police officers stepped out of the cars and walked toward my backyard gate. They moved with the professional calm that comes from years of experience, but their presence immediately changed the atmosphere of the entire gathering. I rushed toward the gate to meet them, my heart pounding so hard I could barely think straight. Behind me, I could hear the confused murmurs of my guests and the frightened whispers of the teenagers. "Ma'am," the lead officer said as I approached. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes that seemed apologetic for the intrusion. "We received a complaint about a large gathering and possible disturbing the peace. We need to check on the situation here." "A complaint," I repeated, though I already knew exactly who had made it. "Officer, this is just a birthday party for my daughter. We have permission from the HOA, and we are not violating any noise ordinances." As the officers walked into my backyard, I could see the shock and embarrassment on the faces of my family and friends. The teenagers looked scared and confused. My parents appeared worried and angry. This was exactly the kind of humiliation I had feared when I decided to throw this party. But then something unexpected happened. The 2 men in dark suits who had been quietly observing from the background suddenly stepped forward. They moved with the kind of confidence that immediately commanded attention from the police officers. "Officers," one of them said in a calm, professional voice, I am Agent Rodriguez with the governor's security detail. This is Agent Thompson. We are here on protective duty. The lead police officer's expression changed instantly. His posture straightened, and his tone became more formal and respectful. Governor's security, he repeated. Sir, we were not informed of any state-level presence in this area today. That is correct, Agent Rodriguez replied. This is an informal social visit. The governor's children are attending this birthday celebration as personal guests of the family. I watched this exchange with growing amazement. The police officers were clearly reassessing the entire situation. What had started as a routine response to a neighbor complaint was suddenly something much more significant. But Corinne was not finished causing problems. From her position at the fence, she began shouting loud enough for everyone to hear. Officers, those people are lying to you. This is exactly the kind of disruption I was talking about. You need to do your job and shut this down. The lead officer looked toward Corinne with an expression of mild annoyance. Ma'am, please stay on your own property while we handle this situation. I will not stay quiet, Corinne yelled back. I called you here because this woman thinks she can do whatever she wants. Look at all these people. Listen to that noise. This is supposed to be a quiet neighborhood. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and anger. Not only had Corinne called the police on my daughter's birthday party, but now she was making a scene in front of everyone, including the governor's children. Agent Thompson spoke quietly to the lead officer. Sir, if you need to verify our credentials, you can contact the governor's office directly. But I can assure you that this is a legitimate family gathering with no violations of any kind. The police officer nodded and then walked toward Corinne's fence. Ma'am, I need to inform you that this appears to be a private family celebration with no noise violations or illegal activities. These people have the right to use their own property for reasonable social gatherings. Corinne's face was turning red with frustration. But they are lying to you. You cannot just take their word for this. I demand that you investigate properly. What she did not realize was that by refusing to accept the officer's assessment, she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The lead officer turned back toward Agent Rodriguez with a question that would change everything. Sir, would you mind if I verified this information with my supervisor? Given the circumstances, I want to make sure we handle this situation appropriately. Of course, Agent Rodriguez replied. Please take whatever steps you need to confirm our presence here. As the officer reached for his radio, I could see Corinne standing at her fence with a satisfied smile on her face. She thought she was about to be vindicated. She thought the police were going to side with her and shut down our party. She had no idea that she was about to learn exactly who she had decided to mess with. The lead officer stepped away from the group to make his radio call. I watched his face carefully as he spoke to whoever was on the other end. His expression went from professional curiosity to obvious surprise, and then to something that looked like concern. When he walked back toward us, his entire demeanor had changed. The casual attitude of responding to a routine neighbor complaint was gone, replaced by the careful respect of someone who understood they were dealing with a situation far above their normal pay grade. Agent Rodriguez, he said formally, my supervisor has confirmed your credentials and the nature of your presence here. We apologize for any inconvenience this call may have caused. Agent Rodriguez nodded graciously. No need to apologize, officer. You were responding to a citizen complaint, which is exactly what you should do. We appreciate your professionalism in handling this situation. But Corinne was not ready to give up. From her position at the fence, she had been straining to hear every word of the conversation, and she clearly did not like what she was witnessing. "What are they talking about over there?" she demanded, her voice carrying across both yards. "I have a right to know what is being discussed about my complaint." The lead officer looked toward her with visible frustration. "Ma'am, as I explained, this is a legitimate family gathering with no violations. We will be clearing the scene shortly." "That is not good enough," Karen shouted. "I want to know who these people claim to be. I want to see identification. I want to speak to your supervisor." I felt my stomach drop as I realized that Karen was not going to let this go quietly. She was going to keep pushing until she got answers, and those answers were going to reveal exactly how badly she had miscalculated. The officer looked at Agent Rodriguez, who nodded slightly. "Ma'am," the officer called to Karen, "if you want to discuss this further, please come over here so we can speak privately." Karen practically marched across her backyard and around the fence to reach us. She was wearing a bright yellow sundress and had obviously taken time to make herself presentable before calling the police. Her expression was one of righteous indignation mixed with anticipation of victory. "Now," she said as she approached our group, "I want to know exactly who these people are and why you are taking their word over mine. I am a tax-paying citizen of this community, and I have rights." The lead officer glanced at Agent Rodriguez again, who gave another small nod of permission. "Ma'am," the officer said carefully, "the individuals you are questioning are part of the governor's security detail. They are here because the governor's children are attending this birthday party as personal guests." For a moment, Karen just stared at him blankly, as if the words had not quite registered in her brain. "The governor's children," she repeated slowly. "That is correct," the officer confirmed. "This is a private social gathering that includes members of the governor's family. There are no violations of any kind taking place here." I watched Karen's face as the full implications of what she had done began to sink in. The color drained from her cheeks, and her mouth opened and closed several times without any sound coming out. But that is impossible," she finally stammered. "These are just regular people. This is just a regular birthday party. You cannot expect me to believe that." Agent Thompson stepped forward with his credentials clearly visible. "Ma'am, I can assure you that we are exactly who we say we are. If you would like to verify our presence here, you are welcome to contact the governor's office directly." Karen looked at the credentials, then at the agents, then at the police officers. Her eyes were wide with growing panic as she realized that her attempt to humiliate me had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. I did not know," she said weakly. "How was I supposed to know that?" But even as she said it, I could see that she was not ready to admit defeat. The stubborn pride that had driven her to call the police in the first place was preventing her from backing down gracefully. Meanwhile, the governor's children had handled the entire situation with remarkable maturity. They had stayed close to Emma and the other teenagers, quietly reassuring them that everything was fine. Michael had even suggested continuing the pool games to help distract from the adult drama unfolding nearby. "Is everything okay, Mrs. Johnson?" Sarah, the governor's daughter, asked me quietly. "We can leave if our presence is causing problems for you." The kindness and consideration in her voice nearly brought tears to my eyes. Here was a young person who could have demanded special treatment or made a big scene about being interrupted by police at a party. Instead, she was worried about me and my daughter. "You are not causing any problems at all," I assured her. "You are our guests, and you are welcome here for as long as you want to stay." But Karen was not finished, making things worse for herself. As the police officers began to wrap up their investigation, she started raising her voice again. "This is ridiculous," she declared. "I do not care who these people think they are. I still filed a legitimate complaint about noise and disruption. You cannot just ignore my rights as a citizen." The lead officer turned back toward her with an expression of barely controlled patience. "Ma'am, filing false police reports is a serious offense. I strongly suggest that you consider whether you want to continue pursuing this complaint." But Karen was too deep into her tantrum to hear the warning in his voice. "False reports," she snapped. "I will show you false reports. I have been documenting every single violation this woman has committed since she moved into this neighborhood." That was when I realized that Karen was about to make her situation infinitely worse. She was about to double down. Instead of apologizing and walking away, Karen went back to her house and returned with a thick folder and her cell phone. The folder was bursting with papers, and I could see photographs sticking out from between the pages. "Here," she announced loudly, thrusting the folder toward the lead officer. "I have been keeping detailed records of every single violation and disturbance caused by this woman and her family. Noise complaints, property maintenance issues, unauthorized gatherings. It is all documented." The police officer accepted the folder with obvious reluctance. As he flipped through the pages, his expression grew more and more incredulous. I could see from his face that Karen's evidence was not as compelling as she believed it to be. But she was not finished. She held up her cell phone and began taking pictures and videos of everyone in my backyard. "I am documenting this entire interaction," she declared. "I want evidence of how the police are being manipulated by these con artists. I am going to post this on social media and expose this corruption." Agent Rodriguez stepped forward with the kind of calm authority that comes from years of dealing with difficult situations. "Ma'am, I need to inform you that photographing and filming state security personnel without permission could be considered a security violation. I strongly recommend that you stop recording immediately." But Karen was beyond listening to reason. The realization that she had made a terrible mistake seemed to be driving her toward even more irrational behavior. "Security violation," she laughed bitterly. "You people are just making this up as you go along. I know my rights, and I have the right to document what happens in my own neighborhood." She turned toward me with undisguised hatred in her eyes. "And you," she pointed an accusing finger at me. "Do not think this gets you off the hook. I know exactly what kind of person you are. Single mother, works multiple jobs, probably getting government assistance. You moved into this neighborhood and immediately started causing problems." I felt my face burning with humiliation and anger. She was attacking me personally in front of my family, my friends, and my daughter's guests. She was trying to make me feel ashamed of working hard to provide for my child. "Karen," I said as calmly as I could manage, "I have never done anything to hurt you or cause problems in this neighborhood. I have tried to be a good neighbor from the day we moved in." "Good neighbor," she shrieked. "You call having parties with strangers good neighboring. You call letting your grass get too long good neighboring. You call parking your car in front of my house good neighboring." The police officers were watching this display with growing discomfort. Karen was clearly having some kind of breakdown, and it was becoming increasingly obvious that her complaints were petty and unreasonable. But what made the situation even more awkward was that the governor's children were witnessing every word of this tirade. They were seeing an adult woman attack a working mother for crimes like having slightly long grass and hosting a birthday party. Michael, the governor's son, quietly walked over to where Emma was standing. She looked embarrassed and upset by the scene Corinne was creating. "Hey," he said gently, "do not let this ruin your birthday. Some people just cannot handle seeing other people be happy." The wisdom and kindness in those words, coming from a 16-year-old boy, made the contrast with Corinne's behavior even more stark. Meanwhile, Agent Thompson had taken out his own phone and was discreetly recording Corinne's outburst. When she noticed what he was doing, she became even more agitated. "Now you are recording me," she demanded. "I did not give you permission to do that." "Ma'am," Agent Thompson replied calmly, "when someone makes threats and displays erratic behavior around individuals under our protection, we document that behavior for security purposes." Corinne's eyes went wide as she realized the implications of what he had said. "Threats," she repeated. "I never made any threats. I am just trying to protect my neighborhood from people who do not belong here." The lead police officer closed Corinne's folder and handed it back to her. "Ma'am, I have reviewed your documentation, and I need to inform you that nothing in here constitutes a violation of any laws or ordinances. Filing repeated complaints about legal activities could be considered harassment." Harassment! Corinne's voice was reaching a pitch that was almost painful to listen to. "I am being harassed by these people. They are the ones who moved into a quiet neighborhood and started disturbing the peace." She turned back toward the agents with wild desperation in her eyes. "I do not believe any of this. You people are not who you say you are. This is all some kind of elaborate scam, and these police officers are falling for it." That was when the police supervisor arrived. "I heard another car pulling into my driveway, and a moment later, a woman in a sergeant's uniform walked into my backyard. She took one look at the scene, immediately recognized the security agents, and her expression became very serious indeed." Corinne was about to learn that doubling down on a bad decision can sometimes make things infinitely worse. Sergeant Williams was a tall woman with graying hair and the kind of presence that immediately commanded respect from everyone present. She walked directly to Agent Rodriguez and engaged in a brief, quiet conversation that I could not hear. After a few moments, she approached Corinne with an expression that was all business. "Ma'am, I am Sergeant Williams. I understand you filed the complaint that brought my officers here today. I need to inform you that filing false police reports is a Class A misdemeanor that carries serious legal consequences." Corinne's face went pale, but she was still not ready to back down. "False reports," she protested. "I reported exactly what I saw, a large gathering with noise and disruption. How is that false?" Sergeant Williams looked around my backyard, taking in the quiet conversation of adults, the well-behaved teenagers, and the modest volume of music still playing in the background. "Ma'am, what I see here is a private family gathering on private property with no violations of noise ordinances or any other laws. What I also see is that you have wasted city resources and interfered with state security operations." The word state seemed to hit Corinne like a physical blow. For the first time since this whole situation began, she appeared to truly understand the magnitude of her mistake. I did not know about any state involvement," she said weakly. "How was I supposed to know that?" "You were not supposed to know," Sergeant Williams replied firmly. "But you were supposed to verify that actual violations were taking place before calling emergency services. Making false reports because you personally disapprove of legal activities is not acceptable." As the sergeant spoke, I noticed that several of my neighbors from other houses had come outside to see what was happening. Word was spreading quickly through the subdivision that police cars and government agents were at my house. Mrs. Peterson from 3 houses down walked over with a concerned expression. "Sarah, is everything all right?" she asked. "We saw all the police cars and wanted to make sure you and Emma were okay." "Everything is fine," I assured her. "Just a misunderstanding that is being cleared up." But I could see the curiosity in her eyes as she noticed the serious-looking men in suits standing near the pool. Soon, other neighbors were finding excuses to step outside and observe the situation. Karen noticed the growing audience and seemed to realize that her very public meltdown was being witnessed by the entire neighborhood. The smugness and confidence she had displayed earlier were completely gone, replaced by obvious panic and embarrassment. Sergeant Williams continued her conversation with Karen. "Ma'am, I am not going to arrest you today, but I want you to understand that this incident will be documented. If we receive further complaints from you that turn out to be unfounded, you could face charges for harassment and making false reports." "But I have rights," Karen protested, though her voice lacked the conviction it had held earlier. "I have the right to report problems in my neighborhood." "You have the right to report actual problems," the sergeant corrected. "You do not have the right to weaponize police services because you disapprove of your neighbor's legal activities." By this time, more neighbors had gathered, and I could hear whispered conversations as people tried to figure out what was happening. The presence of obvious security personnel was creating quite a stir in our usually quiet subdivision. Emma approached me with Michael and Sarah, the governor's children. "Mom, can we go back to the party now?" she asked. "Everyone wants to play more pool games, and we still have not cut the cake again for pictures." The resilience and maturity of these teenagers in the face of adult drama was remarkable. They had not let Karen's behavior ruin their enjoyment of the celebration. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, giving her a hug. "This is your day and nothing is going to spoil it." As the police began to wrap up their investigation and prepare to leave, I realized that the story of what had happened today was going to spread throughout our neighborhood very quickly. Karen had wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. Instead, she had humiliated herself in the most public way possible. But the consequences of her actions were just beginning. Within hours, the story would be all over social media. By the next day, it would reach the local news, and Karen would discover that attacking someone's family celebration can have repercussions that extend far beyond a single afternoon. The immediate aftermath of the police visit was actually wonderful. Once the officers and agents confirmed that everything was legitimate and legal, the party resumed with even more energy than before. The drama seemed to have bonded all the guests together, and the teenagers were especially excited to have been part of such an unusual situation. Emma's friends kept asking her about the security guys and whether she knew she was friends with the governor's kids. She handled the attention with grace, following the lead of Michael and Sarah, who were clearly experienced at maintaining privacy while still being friendly. The governor's children stayed until the party officially ended at 9 o'clock. They helped clean up, posed for pictures with Emma, and exchanged contact information with her and several other kids. What had started as a surprise guest appearance had turned into genuine friendships. But the real consequences for Karen began to unfold over the following days. By Sunday morning, cell phone videos of her meltdown had appeared on multiple social media platforms. Neighbors who had witnessed the scene shared their own accounts of what they had seen. The story of Karen versus the governor's kids began spreading beyond our subdivision. On Monday, Corinne received a formal letter from the HOA board requesting a meeting to discuss multiple complaints about harassment and inappropriate behavior toward fellow residents. It turned out that several neighbors had been documenting her pattern of harassment for months, but no one had spoken up until now. Tuesday brought a visit from a representative of the district attorney's office, who explained that while they would not be filing charges related to the false police report, Corinne was being placed on a watch list for potential harassment violations. By Wednesday, the local news had picked up the story. They could not name the governor's children directly, but the basic facts of neighbor calls police on birthday party attended by governor's family made for compelling television. Corinne tried to fight back by posting her own version of events on social media, but her accounts only made her look worse. Her claims that she was the victim of harassment and conspiracy were met with ridicule and additional documentation of her problematic behavior. The social pressure became too much for her to handle. Within 2 months, Corinne put her house up for sale. She could not handle facing neighbors who had witnessed her public breakdown and who now knew the truth about her character. The day she moved out, several neighbors actually threw an impromptu block party to celebrate. But the positive changes in our neighborhood extended far beyond Corinne's departure. The governor's family did become genuine friends with ours. Emma was invited to several state events where she met other young people from around the state. She received a scholarship recommendation that helped her get into her first-choice college. The connections made at her 16th birthday party opened doors that changed the entire trajectory of her life. More importantly, the other neighbors felt empowered to stand up against bullying and harassment. People began reporting Corinne-type behavior from other residents instead of suffering in silence. Our homeowners association updated their policies to better address harassment and frivolous complaints. My relationship with local law enforcement improved dramatically. The officers who had responded to the call made a point of checking on us periodically, not because they suspected problems, but because they wanted to maintain good community relations. The pool in our backyard became a gathering place for positive neighborhood events. We hosted end-of-summer parties, holiday celebrations, and fundraisers for local charities. What Corinne had tried to destroy became the heart of a stronger, more connected community. Looking back on that day, I realized that Corinne's attempt to humiliate and silence me actually accomplished the opposite of what she intended. Her actions brought positive attention to our family, created lasting friendships, and exposed her own character flaws to the entire neighborhood. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living your life with dignity and treating others with respect. When you do that consistently, people notice. And when someone tries to tear you down unjustly, the community you have built will stand up for you. Emma still talks about her 16th birthday as the day she learned that standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult, always leads to something better. And our pool parties are still legendary in the neighborhood, though now we have much better security.